Good morning. Welcome to another session of mindful drawing. Today we'll be exploring centers and finding a space within us for the day to center and recenter, to be flexible and creative, and begin with a playful act of drawing. So come join me. I thought it'd be a good time with this approach to the finals to do a little bit of centering, something maybe like a mandala drawing exercise, but I don't have much experience in that. I just know what they are, and so I'll build off what I know and work in a way of finding the center of things through drawing and contemplating on that. It's a really bright, wonderful sunny day. We have windows that face straight east, and in that, doing something like yoga or working out in our living room is very hot right now, even if it's cool outside. So I spent most of the morning staring straight into the sun, and I thought that was kind of a nice place to maybe develop from in the gratitude for the light and warmth that brings. As a warm-up exercise, I think we could begin by just drawing some circles, the absence of and direct relationship to center being a part of them. And I'm just going to work by stacking some circles up across the page, going a little bit quick so that I'm not too tied into whether they're good circles or round circles. At first, just getting the hand to move. And I thought for myself a fun thing to do would be, as I approach the end of a line on this piece of paper, to switch hands, so I'm always working away from the direction of drawing, so I'm not pushing into the paper today, just having it flow. And as I switch to my left hand, having to take a lot more attention to that movement, to really bring awareness to my muscles and my whole arm, and awareness to the not as connected or not as fluid bridge between that hand for me and my mind. And it doesn't always do what I ask it to do at first. And that opens up some space for me, I think, to listen to what it's doing, which is a little more challenging in my right hand since it knows how to do these things so much quicker. And so as I work through the left, really listening to the feedback that the hand gives, and then switching when I reach the end of a row or a column to go back the other direction. And see if I can bring that attention to my primary hand, my right in this case. And maybe slow it down a little. See if I can meet the beginning with the end as I describe these series of loose centers. And now I feel more of the interaction of this pen with the paper as it wants to push my hand around a little bit from its texture and the rigidity of the tip of the felt in this case. And can I come back to my left and bring the same attention to the beginning and end, seeing if the circles can close and meet with each other. It's okay if they don't. It's okay if they overlap. That might be interesting. In every place where a curve or a line meets another curve or a line, we get an intersection. That intersection describes another point, and that point can become a new center. So we have something flexible and adaptable. And I think I'll give one more row to my right hand. And bringing my breath into it a little bit, giving an out breath as I draw, and taking an in breath in the space between. And this really slows down these circles with my more accurate hand and mind connection, deepening that attention to the act of drawing through a medium. And reminding us to breathe and take it slow. That has, I think, gotten us to a good place of warmed up connection. It's brought me at least to a bit of a center there through the breath. I'm going to pick a place on the page, anywhere that you feel is right or centered. It could be on the left or the middle or the right, and it will develop out. I'm going to stick with the general circle. Maybe just draw one somewhere. And begin to work my way out from that center with a series of consecutive circles, trying to find the center of that circle with more circles overlapping, rotating around the center. These points being opportunities to pivot and realign, to rotate our awareness from where we might be to where we want to be. And as I move around, find a new center and start to bring my attention to the visual challenge here of keeping track of where I'm drawing from and to as this new center shifts across the page and the density starts to increase. And use that space of challenge to let my mind sink into the drawing, to not see so much where the circles are going, but just bring attention and focus to that place of intersection where I first draw, and let my hand do the rest. Starting and stopping in the same location. You start to build these snowflakes which overlap and have many new opportunities to recenter and re-begin with a new sequence. And if it helps, you can begin to calibrate this to the breath, which will slow it down a little. Take a breath in and draw with the breath out. This is when I begin to feel an influence on the size of the circles that I'm drawing, connecting with my natural rate of breathing. Take a little time to try some bigger circles. All in the out breath. And recognize the challenge in those larger circles. It's much more difficult for me to keep them circular. I'm not too concerned with that. They can be ovals, they can be ellipses, they can be raisins, wiggly blobs. Whatever helps me connect to that motion of my hand and arm and the breath. As this area expands, I begin to play a little bit. Focus my attention in on the size of circles that I'm drawing. Playing with each center having its own new world or new territory. Each time we come back to that locus, a place of focus, that we can redefine our intention and begin again. And just bouncing my way across the map helps me release some of my desire to guide the drawing beyond just the act of creating a circle around a center, or many centers around a center. And if we are feeling a good flow there to really bring in some new attention, I'm going to switch to my left and see where this takes the drawing, as my circles are going to start to do new things. They're probably going to wobble a little bit more. I'm just going to breathe through them. And I start to bring my awareness to how many circles I draw. It's probably been a variable, as the attention is on moving the pen around that center rather than how many times. And now I will shift that and calibrate to a consistency for a few iterations. I see 4s and 5s and 6s. I'm going to go with a 4 of a little clover. I find that the 4 centers begin to define an axis. 4 possible directions reaching out from that nexus. Let's see if we can do a big one with the left hand. And breathe out. Well, that gets a lot more wobbly. Destabilizes my center a little. How do we bring some focus to that challenge as a way to grow from it and to be aware of the growth? There's a really fascinating bit of technology that I've looked into in the past that uses kind of audio-based and non-auditory sound waves through a headphone device to increase awareness and attention to the physical aspects of the body. And there are these headphone devices that help people learn physical skills, say like an exercise practice, a movement with a certain piece of equipment, or a music practice, the consistent movement with an instrument, and somehow entrains that muscle memory deeper into the brain. It accelerates practice through technology. It doesn't really take a shortcut from what I understand, because it still relies so much on that repetition and consistency, that return to form, to the baseline, return to that center in order to have attention to the growth. And my left hand is getting a little tired. So if your hands get tired, especially from doing the same movement over and over again, it's okay to take a little rest with them. You switch back to the other. And you've developed perhaps a larger field growing here. And feel free to continue on, just breathing through the repetition of circles. Or maybe take a few minutes now that this has produced a new territory on the page, and start to look around in it and just have some fun drawing. Seeing how this series of connected and related, but also variable centers has established a canvas for some creativity. I always think of this as a little bit of the moment of wiggling your toes and wiggling your fingers, letting something that's automatic nature, like breathing or drawing a series of circles, which helps us to quiet and center the mind, also can become numbing to what we're doing or the potentials within it. We gotta bring our attention back to our fingers and toes and see what we see. I'm really grateful for having chosen this pen today. It just happened to be on my desk out of my backpack. But these are some relatively bulk pilot fine point type pen that I use for most just daily writing or any kind of note stuff on my desk. They have a very satisfying flow to the ink that comes from them. Very crisp, but also fast expression onto the page. And I like to be bringing some awareness to that and kind of savor the feeling of my medium working through the paper. Really narrow in that attention to it. The slight roughness of the Bristol in this case, and the glide with just a little vibration over the top of that. And I don't think these drawings really need to hold any meaning or purpose, just an exercise to sharpen that connection a little bit between the mind and the hand, and also relax it so it can be both firm and supple. But sometimes I do think it's interesting to read into them, and this thing that I'm beginning to respond to, these intersections between the flow of the circles, and thinking where our center may be at any time, where our focus and attention and our grounding, and how that can help us interact with others by finding a little overlap between our positions, that we're not so fine and firm as a single point, but a little bit of a wobbly, expanding center defined by some loose, overlapping circles. We can find just that little territory of the common ground or the Venn diagram to connect. One thing I'm finding very pleasant and somewhat liberating in this consistent but variable field that is developed here is that I can take kind of each starting area that I've drawn in beyond the initial act, and it can have its own language or its own feel. It gives me a place to play, to explore through this act of drawing, to just have a little flow and freedom and know that I can follow it through for a while, or lose my interest and not find it engaging and just move to a new place and try something new, play with something new. And hopefully that can be part of our creativity for the day, that if something's not working, we can recenter and recalibrate in the same space, this space of drawing for us right now, or space of negotiation or planning or teaching. Try something new. Be free to experiment and see what works. And as our time nears the end, please feel free to keep drawing, or stretch, let your fingers relax, let your mind soften after so much attention to a physical action. It can actually be quite draining, I find. Let it reabsorb a little attention back to where we are, and hopefully go into the rest of our day knowing we can have a little bit more flow, a little bit more flexibility, and really engage it with creativity. After working through this canvas, I'm finding myself drawn to these more complex intersections. Some happen here towards the periphery, some happen in the dense middle, and just bringing some attention to them with a thickening of the edge. For me, an often used technique of softening their corners to really call them out. And I like that they start to develop kind of an ambiguous, are they a hole or are they a raised shape? And in early drawing, that ambiguity is very productive. Let's see how many unique, complex, variable intersections we can find and pull out from the drawing. as we get closer to this constellation, this dense aggregation of these shapes towards the center, the little intersecting regions become tighter, smaller, denser. We begin to fill them in more completely. Probably one of the most interesting things I'm finding here is how many I miss as I work my way around and then discover again. It's such an exciting landscape to explore. There's always more of them to find and extract and define. That brings uniqueness to each one, a moment of creative expression, a moment of exploration. Maybe it's an opportunity to be brave and see where we could go beyond the direct, visible shapes and find more overlapping complexity to this. Begin in the same areas, but take them to different boundaries. These chance encounters, reflections, and intersections to find new shapes at a different scale, and a different layer or lens to reading the drawing. I think that is a powerful place of creativity, to see the unseen and begin to find a way to manifest it in your kingdom. Pattern matching part of my brain gets so interested in trying to find meaning in a space here, in a space where all we're doing is drawing circles and connecting centers and then filling in regions and playing with their tone and value. But for me, I see something maybe very analogous to my own personal center, where there's this dense, dark, or obfuscated core that we're always masking or layering around, and those layers can become quite interesting, very rich, very complex. They become our interface and overlap with the world around us, and as we try to peel them away or get further in, it's influenced by those layers. Our self, our center, becomes a knot more entangled with the universe around us. It becomes its own very rich area that can't be taken apart. We can't be isolated, that we are not some individual self somewhere, but this collection of entangled wholes, these overlapping and flowing centers that we share with anything and everyone around us. And maybe it's just a drawing, and I'm just reading into it, reflecting, finding space within myself to consider myself and where I am and how I am being centered today. Hope everyone has a wonderful day. Continue drawing, and see you next week. Thank you.